Just got done with a great episode with Kyle Lucey. Wow, you're going to want to tune into this. A fantastic conversation for the adventure of the heart. We're going to dig into some great things about adventure, about faithfulness, and there's no holds barred with this. So get ready to have a great conversation. This is a long conversation. You're going to want to listen to this maybe on the go, cup of coffee, maybe join us with a bourbon, whatever it is that you're going to do. Maybe break it up, come back to it, or listen to the whole thing. If you're on a ride, on your commute, take it along with you. This is a great conversation. You don't want to miss a moment of it. Kyle is just a great guy to jump into, but I love the way that we get into some of our conversations. And tonight was a doozy. For you men especially, you're going to want to hear this. And wives, send your man to this, because I think every guy needs to hear conversations like this and have these types of conversations in their life. So if you're out there in the hustle and bustle of life and you're feeling a little downtrodden, feeling a little stuck, boy, get charged up. Let your soul just get engaged. So with that, I give you my conversation with Kyle. Hey, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Doing good. Today we are here with Kyle Lucey, the man, the myth, the legend, the 46er, the husband, the adventurer, the warrior, financial guru. Thanks for joining, man. This is great.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to have this conversation today. And I think you should be excited to hear this conversation, because Kyle is a heck of a man, and I'm glad that he's joining on here today. And just to give maybe a little intro of, and I'll let you see a piece of this too, but Kyle is one of our men's captains with the ministry at the church, and just an awesome man of God who is out there living a life that is faithful, it's fierce, it's full of adventure, full of love and compassion, all of those things. And today I'm glad that we get to sit and chat about a number of things, but certainly the heart of a man. And boy, you live that out. So maybe you can just tell the people a little bit about who you are and what you're doing, and we'll get the ball rolling.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I think I define myself as a disciple of Christ. Everything in my life is faith-centered. As you said, I'm a husband, married 2 years now to my beautiful wife, Megan. She's the center of my world, and she keeps me going. Love what I do career-wise, get to help people every day, in my free time, get to help people, young men around the church and young adults around the church. And when I'm not doing any of that stuff, I'm usually out in the mountains, hiking, backpacking, pushing it. I think it's really important to always be improving mind, body, and spirit. So I'm very passionate about that, and just a driven guy, and I love life.
I think we share an affinity for a number of things. Number one, certainly our faith, right? That's a cornerstone of everything that is building upon it. Number two, probably some Dave Matthews in there, although you're a wild man.
I'm into it.
Yeah. How many concerts have you been to?
We're over 60 now.
Wow, that's awesome.
Over 60.
I've only been to the one concert, right? But I was a Dave nut for a long time, until I actually saw him live, and then it cooled my jets for a bit. But then I got back on the train. The outdoors, and I think tied with that is Blessed Pier Giorgio.
Yep, definitely.
That Call of the Wild, man, it's something fierce, and we're gonna jump into that here in a few minutes. But man, it's just awesome being able to serve alongside you. So
Likewise.
So we met a few years ago, well, a number of years ago now at this point, just by happenstance at church.
Yep.
And so when we met, it was after Mass. I'm like, oh, who's that guy? And I think I saw you a couple times beforehand. And I'm like, I gotta reach out to this guy. Like, how many young guys are actually coming to church and actively participating in this?
Yep.
I gotta know who this guy is. And thankfully, you were receptive to me just being like, hey. Sometimes I talk to somebody and they're like, yeah, I gotta go. Oh, all right, we'll see you. But this is great. So today we're actually jumping into, before we actually get into some business, we're sipping on a couple of good sips.
Yeah.
So we're finishing off a Four Roses small batch, and then we're going to break into, if the spirit allows, a little Redwood Empire. You might actually enjoy this. It's a straight whiskey.
Enjoy the label.
Yeah, I figured this was definitely a Kyle Lucey type of flavor here.
Looks like a philosopher with a wilderness hat.
So,
Right up my alley.
yeah, so we're going to be sipping on that over the course of this conversation, and just having some fun today, talking about the adventures of the heart and what that means for a man. And coming up with next month is going to be the Iron Ore Retreat, the men's retreat back in the Adirondacks, and that is going to be something that, it's going to be awesome. And you've joined us for a number of them.
Yeah, a couple
actually,
of them now.
2 or 3.
Two.
Of them. 2 of them. Awesome.
2.
But you've been going to the Adirondacks long before this. So
Yeah.
how did you start getting into doing your adventure part of your life?
Well, the gain of all the wilderness experiences started, I would say, or was predicated with loss. So, growing up, played ice hockey competitively, very competitively, all the way up to, high school. We won our state title when I was a senior. A bunch of us got scouted to go to schools, myself included. I had no idea what I wanted to do at the time. And, coach said, "Do you want to come and play hockey for us?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I'm in." So I went to play hockey and ended up having a really bad injury out there. Blew out my lower back and had to have it operated on. So brought the hockey career to a grinding halt. And I remember what are usually life milestones for people, like turning 21. I was on the couch in my parents' house, couldn't go out, couldn't do anything. I was, just really laid out for a while with this. The surgery didn't go like it was supposed to, and it was a long healing process. And I finally got to the point where I went out one day and I took a walk in Amherst State Park, right around the corner. And I had no idea what I was doing. I was wearing jeans and like Timberland boots, and my feet got soaking wet, and it was in the snow. But I loved it, and I was like, I want to do more of this. So, touched base with a couple buddies, and that turned into hiking all the local parks around here: Chestnut Ridge, Hunters Creek in East Aurora. And then we wanted something bigger, so we went to Allegheny State Park, started doing Allegheny in the summertime. In the wintertime, back was feeling better, and I want to say it was somewhere around 2016. I asked one of my friends, I was just on the internet, and I looked up tallest mountain in New York State, and I see Mount Marcy. And as you know, I'm not really a toes in kind of guy. If the water feels right, I'm doing a cannonball in. So this turns into buying a bunch of backpacking stuff. We made this huge big plan to do a backpacking loop in the Adirondacks, go over Mount Marcy and go over a bunch of other peaks in the area and then loop back. And we brought way too much stuff with us. Our packs were so heavy, like 4 times as much as I carry now, and I wasn't even in shape for it, but we were just so excited. So it was my birthday, August 18th, when we hiked in and set up camp. It was like 5 o'clock at night. Wasn't getting dark yet, but my friend was like, it's your birthday, and we saw that sign for Phelps Mountain. It just said 0.9 miles. We should go and do that before dinner. I was like, yeah, we should. So we grabbed like some day packs and we head up Phelps, and that was my first Adirondack peak. We got up just in time for sunset. I mean, the sun was just setting, and it was the most beautiful experience. And that was the first time where I felt like I truly experienced God out in the wilderness, because it was just a sight that, it wasn't even the sight of it. It was just the experience almost brought it. It did bring tears to my eyes, to the point where my friend was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm great. Like, this is amazing. It's incredible." And then the reality sets in that, now it's getting dark and we're not going to get back to camp before. So we had headlamps. That was good, because the entire way down was pitch black. Those woods, when the sun goes down, it goes down and there's no light left. So we're coming down the mountain, and I remember my friend saying, "I'm just so nervous that a bear is going to jump out, and get us." And I was like, "You can't talk about that stuff. We don't think about that. We're going to go down and have dinner." And so we climbed Mount Marcy the next day, get to the top of the mountain. There was a summit steward, and he was like, "Where are you guys headed with those huge packs? It's a lot of weight." I was like, "Yeah, I know." We were hurting, and we went over the other side of Marcy, which is really, really steep. And it started raining. Campsites were full, so we ended up setting up camp in not a comfortable area. And we were still just having a blast. I'm like, even in this rain, this is awesome. And the third night, we slept at a place called Lake Colden, and it was probably the best camping night I've ever had in my whole life. It was just a perfect warm day, still, just a light breeze, and we were just sitting on the pine needles at this campsite, just leaning back against the trees, talking about how awesome it was to be out in the wilderness, looking over the lake. And from that point on, I was just hooked. So started going out, did a couple other mountains with friends, and then one time my parents had a book club out in Tupper Lake, and I said, "Can I go with you and just stay in a tent behind your cabin and borrow your car the next morning?" And they let me. So I got up at 4 a.m, got to the trailhead alone, and that was my first solo set of peaks. Once I figured out that I could do that, that was it. I was like, I want to climb all these mountains.
Wow. And so you went through all 46 peaks?
Went through all 46, yeah. I'm closing in on my second round of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what it means to be a 46er. So you got some people who are tuning in here from out of town. They don't know what that is. What is it?
Yeah, so to be a 46er, it's a club that was made a long time ago of people who climbed all 46 peaks above 4,000 feet in New York. And they're all in the Adirondack Park within pretty close proximity. And a lot of them are trails like we've climbed, Whiteface, Algonquin, where there's actual maintained trails. And a lot of them, if you didn't do this challenge, you would never climb those mountains. They're really rugged and, trees down that you got to climb over. It's more like an obstacle course. They don't take care of them. Rivers that sometimes you can cross, sometimes you can't. And it's an awesome physical challenge, and it's an awesome mental challenge as well. There were a lot of times in those mountains where it was way beyond physical. It was mental. I mean, I've shown you pictures of some of the bug bites I've gotten out there. When I first met my wife's parents, I kind of looked like I had smallpox because I had gotten eaten alive by black flies, and I was actually nervous to meet them. I was like, "You got to tell them there's nothing wrong with me. I really got bitten up bad, and this looks bad." And there were also injuries out there. There were times where I went out and I pushed it a little too hard and slipped and fell and jammed a knee. And, there were times where I ran into bears out there and all by myself. And just all awesome experiences. And more importantly than anything, spiritual experiences out there that really drew me into my faith. And there was one in particular that really just stands out as a pivotal point in my faith life, where I just kind of had a revelation out in the mountains, and really powerful experience.
Would you want to share that?
Sure.
Tell us about that.
So, ironically, this was the bug bite trip. So it's called the Seward Range, and it's 4 peaks: Seward, Emmons, Donaldson, and then there's Seymour, which is aside from those 3 that I listed. So went out, set up camp, did the first 3, slept in my tent, and I'll never forget it, waking up in the morning. There were just probably 30, 40 mosquitoes on the screen of my tent just waiting for me to get out of there. And I was like, man, there's no way I'm going to be able to break this down before they just destroy me. The bug spray didn't work out there. I don't know what it was. They were immune to that. So it was, I want to say, probably a 4 or 5 mile hike on flat ground all the way down to the base of Seymour. And everyone always talks about Seymour as a really rugged mountain, and it is. It deserves a lot of respect. So it was a hard mountain. One of those mountains where you make mistakes on more than a few different parts, you could really hurt yourself. So I'm flying up Seymour. I'm high on life. I just tackled the 3 the day before. It's a beautiful day out. It's probably like 7:30 in the morning that I'm going up this mountain, because I woke up when it was still kind of dark out. I just woke up on my own, packed everything up, got going. And I'm walking really fast, because anytime I slowed down, the bugs are like catching up to me. So I finally get to the mountain and I'm making my way up and realizing how difficult this is. And 3/4 of the way up, I was really starting to get tired. This was before I was in probably shape where I could go a long time without getting tired. And I was getting a little bit winded and had a lot of bruises and cuts on my legs and shins and thighs and, face even. And I remember just getting to the point where the trees were still thick, but it was just a section that was kind of flat. I have a great picture of this. The sun rays were just coming in, and I just stopped, and the bugs were not around anymore, and just got this overwhelming feeling, the exact same that happened on Phelps Mountain. I just didn't understand what that was back then. And it was just, I genuinely felt like that was God calling to me, just calling me closer to him. And for whatever reason after that, that's what really locked me into a point where I was ready to start going to daily mass. And, it was right around the time where I had started going to daily mass for Lent. And then this following summer, this experience happened after I was going to daily mass, and just solidified a lot. And it's one of those experiences where it's hard to explain, but at that point, not that I ever thought he wasn't, but I just knew God was so real, and all of this was his creation. And there was just it was such a privilege that I had to come from, having a broken back, being told I'd never be able to do these things, to just being out there and living and having this adventure and just having this part of me that was being fulfilled that I never knew existed. And that was something that I actually took to a priest who is now my spiritual advisor, and really spent a lot of time digging into that, discerning that, figuring out what that meant out there. And thankfully, that wasn't the last time I had an experience like that. I had many more experiences like that out in the mountains, and which is a lot of the reason why I enjoy going alone. Because, there's something to be said about Jesus going up on the mountain to pray. And I've shared that with you before. I really identify with that. Even down to the point where on my wedding ring, I have the mountain range that my wife and I first climbed etched into my wedding ring. It's just such a huge part of me and a huge part of my life that it helped me grow physically, spiritually into the man that I am today.
So I didn't have that same experience of, obviously, right? But I have found, especially through my 20s, of being outdoors and having that same type of thing, because I was always drawn back to Jesus getting away. He was always climbing a mountain or getting out into the wilderness and retreating for a while. And that was something that drew me back into the woods myself. And so same type of thing with Chestnut Ridge, especially with Chestnut Ridge, because I grew up in Orchard Park. It's 10 minutes away of a bike ride. So just to ride up there, I owned Chestnut Ridge. Just to be out there, days off, I would just explore every nook and cranny of that county park. And love that. And if I can get down to Allegheny, I would get down to Allegheny. I had fortunate travels with my dad and my brothers where we drove cross country, and I did that trip twice. And we did the Grand Canyon, we did Bryce in Zion. There was, where else did we go? There was another spot. There was a big meteor impact spot. I think that's in Arizona. Maybe it's Nevada that we went to and hiked around the rim of that. And every time I'm out in the wilderness, I'm just, you have that silence where you're away from the distractions of life. And you can get into your prayer conversation a lot deeper because you don't have that distraction that's 5 minutes away.
Yep.
You don't have, so you have clarity of thought, you have clarity of heart and soul, where you just start asking questions of, God, and my biggest thing was trying to discern between marriage and priesthood. Mm-hmm. That haunted me through my 20s, that question. Lord, what do you want me to do? And I was asking that question all the time. What do you want me to do? And often enough, I would get answers to other things, but I wasn't getting a clear answer to that. I still had a lot more work to do. And so the answer was just not yet. You're not ready for that answer, and I'd throw a stone, I'd throw some sticks off a ledge, just come on, just give me some clarity with this. But clarity wasn't coming. But there's something about being out there in God's creation where you see his painting, right? And every sunset is different. Every view is different. And I think that for the heart of a man, that outdoors calls you, and you've had some pretty spectacular stories to be able to share where I think the Lord was really working on your heart,
yep.
In preparation, certainly for marriage, but for maybe even your call into doing ministry, to probably just your own heart's work, right? What do you think it is about being outdoors and having that clarity, or at least that space for clarity, that really helps open up that call to prayer?
I think you understand this just as well as anyone. There's so much noise in life. There's good noise, there's bad noise, but there's noise. Career-wise, I'm in a career where, I'm responsible for the financial lives of many, many people. I make decisions that affect the lives of others on a daily basis, and it's something that I'm blessed to be able to do, but I also take it very seriously. So I'm always on. The phone's always on. It's always going off, and it doesn't feel like work to me because it's just a part of who I am, but that's always happening. And, there's always family things that are going on, family commitments that are going on, and we're all running the race, right? So life is busy, and when you get a chance, for me, it's so important. I don't decompress by sitting down and watching TV. It doesn't do a lot for me. The closest I get to that around here is maybe doing yard work. If I'm driving the tractor around in the yard and I get to phase out a little bit, or if I'm in the gym and I'm kind of in my own head, but that's not the same. There's been just moments being in the Linville Gorge in North Carolina, just in the middle of nowhere where you can see every single star in the sky. Being out in Glacier National Park in Montana, or, climbing over West Maroon Pass in Colorado. There's these places where you just look at it and you can't even fathom how there had to have been such a great and brilliant creator to create these things. And there's something about just getting out to that. I always feel called to get out to that. And even now that we're discerning children, I tell my wife, I can't wait to get one of those Osprey packs, and we're going to put the little one in there, and we're taking him up the mountains. And she's like, easy. What? No, he's going to be a 46er probably before he's 2 years old. But awesome. There's just something about being out there. I genuinely love it. I love the peace and quiet. That's the only place where there's true peace and quiet, where my mind can be completely turned off without distraction. And I think there's also something that's just really primal about walking far distances. One of the things I'm working on now, it's a hiking challenge where beyond the 46ers, it's called the Northeast Ultra 8, and there are 8 of the most difficult hikes in the Northeast, and all of them are they're kind of crazy. The one that I did, a couple years ago before your first trip, that was a 52-mile hike, and it had to be done in 24 hours, no breaks. And there's something that's just primal and almost nomadic that brings you back to your roots as a human being, of just that hunter-gatherer mindset where you're just wandering through the wilderness. And it's not like maybe it's different because I'm not looking for something. I've already found it, but I get to engage in it so much more deeply there. And I'm talking about the spiritual aspect of it, in addition to the physical beauty of it. And out there, you're strengthening mind, body, and spirit all at the same time, because I'm in constant prayer when I'm out there, silent prayer. I'm strengthening my body. I'm strengthening my mind by pushing myself to do things that I never thought or imagined I could do. And it's different than being here. I mean, here I strengthen my body in the gym. I strengthen my mind by studying theology and philosophy and these things that I'm interested in. Strengthen my spirit by going to daily mass and being plugged in with holy Catholic men and just a good circle of Catholic people. But out there, I know you're not supposed to do it alone, but again, why did Jesus go out alone so often? He really needed to recharge those batteries and connect with the Father, and I think there's something that's just so conducive being out there to be able to do that.
What a powerful testimony to that. And I think that call that you're talking about that's on the heart, I think a lot of guys share that. But some people get stuck, and they feel like they're trapped in life. They feel like they're not living to the fullest. They're missing moments where they're having the Creator reach out to them. What do you think needs to happen in men who struggle with that? And maybe it's not, hey, I'm just going to do the ultra. Like, what do you think is missing in that equation for men that feel empty inside, to be able to start filling up again?
I don't know if this is the answer for everybody, but I think a lot of it is just by our own human nature. We want to control everything. We want to control our destiny. We want to control our day-to-day lives. So I think a lot of it, the first step is just surrendering. And what does it take to surrender? You got to break free. And, again, I lead more than a busy enough life to say I just don't have time for that. But I create that space because I know that in surrendering and just giving everything up, going out there and saying, this time is your time. I'm blessed to have it with you right now, but this is all for you. This is me being in awe of your creation. And even when I have the blessing of being out there with other people and just sharing in that, especially in the groups that you run, where it's an intentional, prayerful experience. And maybe it's at a different pace for me. It's not just pushing with the mind, lost in itself. But there's something to be said about just giving up control and surrendering out there and breaking free from. Nobody's too busy to be able to break free for a little while. And I think that we get stuck in the rat race, and that can be really depressing. When you're just day after day and you become a machine, it's not healthy, and we're not meant for that. We're meant to have more than just a daily grind every day. Now, don't get me wrong, you have to provide for yourself, for your family, but everybody has time to break free, even if it's just going to a local park around here, or Allegheny's, a short hour-and-a-half ride. My wife and I just went down there, and we were on a 12-mile hike, 13-mile hike, and I love my wife because she'll let me just be in silence a lot on these hikes, and it's just such an awesome recharging point to be able to get out of the woods, get back to the car, and I sit back in the car, and it's just it's like the weight is gone. And I know there's different ways to do that for different people, but I think just as men, there's something, again, that's primal about being out in the woods and about just the basics, right? Just one foot in front of the other, and maybe having a campfire. Our ancestors have been doing that forever. And just cooking a meal around a fire, having conversation, or just if you're by yourself, having silent prayer and just kind of recharging those batteries.
I take after my mom with this, but I love fires. So here we have the fire stove over there, the chimney, and I love coming home to smelling the fire going. So Ani knows how to start up a good fire, and so it doesn't have to wait for me to come home and start. Sometimes I'm coming home, I can smell it coming down the street.
Awesome.
I'm like, the fire's going to come in, and there it is. The house is nice and warm. And sometimes after the kids are in bed, Ani goes to sleep, I'll just pull up a chair and I'll just sit there for a while, like especially in the wintertime when it's just blustery outside. But we have a little camp square out here, a little fire pit. I mean, we've got a humble backyard, just outside of the city, so It's not like we're having big raging fires. But just to even have a fire, summertime, even if it's hot, I love just sitting out there and letting it crackle, pop, and you just see the embers glow, and it just gets you into, like, it sucks you in a little bit. And especially after a long week, or the family life has been hard a little bit. You've been wrestling the kids getting to bed, and you're just like, I just need some time to tune out.
Yeah.
And even just bringing that here on the home front has been a huge help. But especially when camping, you're out there, you can hear all the crickets, hear the rustlings of whatever's around you. But when you're on a fire, for whatever reason, it just captures the imagination. And you tune in, and when that merges with your prayer, I just feel like, at least mentally and spiritually, you just feel like there's a wavelength that you just tune into.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that it's God. You're like, all right, Lord, talk to me. And especially after you've been just dwelling in some scripture and you're just pondering that over, the Lord really works in the midst of that. And I think for any guys who might be tuning into this, you might say, like, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that feels like. I don't know how to get to that. Sometimes it's just beginning. For anybody who's like, I don't know what God's trying to say. I don't hear him. I don't see him. But if you're trying to live out a life to its fullest, if you're trying to live a life filled with adventure, filled with love, one that you're not going to regret, tuning into the one who created you is going to put you into that path. He's going to speak right to that heart. And sometimes you're not, or certainly you're not audibly hearing that, but he speaks right into here. And I think maybe going back to that experience you had for the first time out on the mountain, you recognize that immediately as something that wasn't just a philosophy moment, right? That wasn't just some sort of inspirational speaker that you're recalling,
It wasn't just a pretty sunset.
Right. It wasn't just a pretty sunset, right? There's so much more to this world than just that rat race you're talking about. I love talking about productivity, like I love all that stuff.
Yeah.
But life is so much more than that. That helps us get things done. Helps us to dream and do, right? But it's that righteousness that fuels us along the way. For all of the dreamings and doings. It gives us the reason for that. So because of what the Lord has been working on your heart to do, where do you see yourself in the season of life right now? And what do you think he's asking of you to do?
Man, that's a great question. And there's different answers to that. So I'm in a season of learning, that's for sure. I don't know what prompted it. A lot of people think I'm crazy, but I'm going back for a degree in theology online at Franciscan, and that's just been incredible. I just wanted more. I wanted to know more about the faith. And don't get me wrong, I get a lot out of Mass. I get a lot out of the homilies that I hear every single day and on the weekends. And I'm friends. I have intimate relationships with the priests at our church. We go out to lunch. We talk. We know about each other. We know who we are on a deeper level. And I needed to know more. So, studying philosophy, theology, it's just starting to build this foundational core to me where I'm bringing that to ministry. And I think that's being open to that. And again, I've been the person saying, I don't have time for this, I don't have time for that. You can always make time to a certain extent. And I chipped away at that, started obtaining knowledge, all the way from theology all the way to the point where, this summer I took a human embryology course, just a very pro-life course. Learned so much about the process of how children are created and just how much of a miracle it is every single life that occurs. Everything that needs to happen for that life to occur, for us to be a co-creator with God.
Amen to that.
It's beautiful. And I think in this season of life, I'm really gearing towards having a family and fatherhood. I'm gearing towards every day becoming a stronger disciple. I'm going through spiritual direction where, it's you bring all these struggles to a spiritual advisor once a month, and really you don't just talk about them, you dive into them, and you dive into those deep areas of your life that really need refining, that that iron needs to go back into the fire a little bit. So it's just, we're running the race, back to that concept, right? So I'm running the race. I'm running the spiritual race. I'm trying to keep myself as strong as possible in spirit, in body, and mind, to be the best husband I can be, to be the best mentor that I can be to a lot of people in the community that have come to men's groups that I run. There's been relationships that have developed and turned into mentoring relationships, and I that's just so incredibly fulfilling. There's nothing more fulfilling to me, aside from being a husband, than bringing people closer to the faith. So I think in this season of life, I'm just being called to work on the things that can improve, to be able to be a better disciple, to be able to be a better example, a better influence, a better husband, a better son, a better brother, a better friend. It goes all the way down the line. So, and there's been so many graces from that. There really have. Life is just, don't get me wrong, I have bad days just like anyone else, but I walk around with true joy for life. For every single day, I wake up thankful and truly grateful for that. And, whether I'm out in the mountains, whether I'm in daily mass, whether I'm sitting in a young adult meeting, a Forged meeting, I just enjoy life because God is at the center of it. And when you value God, you value everything else so much more. You value family more, you value friendships more, and you value every blessing that you have more because it's all a gift. And when you have gratitude for that gift and you just want to show that in an outward way all the time, the Lord provides for that.
Well, amen to that. One of the things that reminds me of how the Lord is working in your life, just as an observer, right? Just outside observer, just Guy Adam. Two scriptures come to mind. One is iron sharpens iron, right? And the men's group Forged, right? Where you are a pivotal player in that, a pivotal instrument where the Lord is working on you to form men. And you have a lot of guys who look up to you, as a mentor, as a brother, as that disciple, right? You're working with these guys and you're growing them. And it leads back to what Jesus is called to that first catch of the apostles. I will make you fishers of men, right? And you're living out that call, right? So not only are you fishing for these men, right, but you're forging them as disciples. You're you're stepping into that relationship and you're walking with them. And you make yourself abundantly accessible, right?
Yes.
Which, sometimes is, it's a thing. I'm going to say it's a thing, right?
The Lord provides.
The Lord provides. But even in those moments when they're reaching out and you're on their, not just on their radar, but you're on their deck when they have something of heart and mind, because they know that you've walked the way. Mm-hmm. And that's what a leader is somebody who knows the way, walks the way, and then shows the way. And you're the one who is leading these guys. And what a blessing that is for them, because it's rare to see men who fully embrace that in every aspect of what it means to be a man. And you're living that true to your vocation, right? As a husband, because you absolutely love your wife, and I love hearing the adventures where she's along for the ride, and that, that's awesome. But there's a lot of guys who are trying to figure out what their vocation is. What am I called to do with my life? And is marriage a thing that I should be doing? Because you take a look at how marriages go these days, and there's so many failed marriages, that end in divorce, or they're just riding out a wave that they're not willing to work on or get involved with. But when you see men who are actually doing that, who are all in, who are just saying, I come hell or high water, I'm in this, and then taking that to your labor, giving that to your service as a fruit of your prayer life. Man, that's an example. So when you're tying all of this together, you're looking at, Lord willing, babies on the horizon. What do you want from that family life? How do you want to lead those kids with your wife?
The only way that I know how. The only way that I know how. You pray for the intercession of Saint Joseph to be that humble servant to your family, and also that strong rock to your family, that keeps you're like the lighthouse, and you're showing people the way to the faith, and it's no different than sharing that with young men in the community. And not all of them are young men. Some of them are older than me, and it's very humbling to be able to do that. I'm grateful that I've been given the graces to be able to foster that kind of environment with these guys and bring the knowledge that I have and apply it to this type of setting. I can't wait to do that with my kids. I can't wait to remind myself, the person who once just wanted silence so bad in mass so I could focus, to remind myself that, if the church isn't crying, it's dying. And I hope and pray those days are coming. And I just can't wait for fatherhood. I think of all the great memories that I had with my own father growing up, that I continue to have. It's blossomed into a beautiful relationship now where we share our faith. We're very, very close, and we're really, instead of him kind of shepherding me through this race, we're running the race together now, where we go to daily mass every day, and we talk about the catechism in a year, we talk about prayer, we share books with each other, and it's just such a different type of relationship. And if you don't create that kind of family, then who's going to take care of you when you're older? And there's different things to live for. For me, that's something to live for, to have that family environment, to grow old with family, with children, and God willing with grandchildren, and to pass that faith on to all of them, to teach them the lessons that I've learned. Body willing, to take them out in the mountains and take them camping and show them all the things I've learned through that. And if the body isn't willing, then I have a lot of videos and pictures to show them. And yeah, life's about experiences, right? And whether they're faith experiences, wilderness experiences, you want to share that. I'm the type of person that I wear my heart on my sleeve. I don't lead a hidden life anywhere. What you see is what you get, and I love talking about it. So, not to say that I think the experience of having children is going to be sunshine and rainbows. I know there's a lot of difficulties that come with that, but again, the Lord provides you with exactly what you need for the task at hand. So, with everything in His hands, you're able to live a life without fear, because you know that you're going to have what you need, and tragedy is going to come certain days, but you just keep your eyes focused on what's important, and you let that be the center of your life, and that brings hope. And just all these things I'm talking about, to be able to transfer that down I think it's a beautiful thing.
Man, I love that. Well, thanks for sharing your heart with that. As a witness, right, of that faith, you say, you share it on your sleeve. What's the hardest part of doing that, right? Because a lot of people say, I keep that private. I don't like to talk about it. I don't like to talk about my faith. And there's probably a lot of things that we could just talk about with business, right? With leadership, we could go down that route. And we could just talk about that, right? But we're sidestepping the core of who we are if we're just talking about that. And there's a lot of ways that men can be led, and there's all of YouTube that you can find that stuff, right? You could probably find this too on Faithful Things. But why is it so difficult to do that? Especially in today's day and age. Why is it hard to be able to share and speak freely of the things of faith, especially being productive and being in the midst? It's one thing if you're a priest, but as a high-functioning man, a man in pursuit, a man who's just living life to the fullest, why is that so hard for us to do?
I think there's different aspects to why I think that is. First and foremost, we live in a society where, the phrase, just be a man, or just suck it up and deal with it. You need to be strong. You can be strong and be outward. I feel as though you're even stronger sharing faith, because when you keep that bottled in, you try to fight these battles yourself. That's exactly what the evil one wants. He wants you contained. He wants you isolated, and he wants you separated from having that brotherhood. And once I realized that, what we share in the community of Catholic men, that I know, you have a family there, and you have strength, and there's strength in prayer. So I think society conditions us to have a lack of humility. And humility is the first step to really getting in touch with your faith, getting to know God, and then getting to know yourself. You are a creation of God. He wants you to follow him. He wants you to be humble. So I think for a lot of guys, there's just that stigma that you don't share these things. Certain things are meant to be kept private. And the people I know in my life that hurt the most are the people who can't talk openly about these things and try to bottle it all up. And I know people who have great pain because of that they have a shell too thick for me to penetrate through. And it's sad to see that. Your heart goes out for people like that. And then, I also know guys on the other end of the spectrum who are just so open about their faith. And I see them, we talk, and I would never repeat the things they say to me in confidence, but they say things to me in confidence. I say things to them in confidence about what we struggle with. And, there's camaraderie in that. There's strength in that, where you can support each other and be there for each other and have someone to call and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. I need your advice, or I need your help. And there's a couple guys that I'm really close with that I touch base with, daily, no less than daily. And it's something where, one of them is somebody who I see daily in the office, and, we'll come in and check on each other and say, how are you doing? And it's not a, like, how's your day going? It's a, how are you actually doing? And what can I do to help you? Is there anything you're struggling with? What's going right? What's going wrong? Type thing. So again, can you surrender that pride? Like, refocus that whole topic of surrender. Can you surrender that pride and open yourself up to the vulnerability of having, accountability partners when it comes to faith, when it comes to life? Because is that not who you want to be surrounded with as you're growing older? People who are going to help you get better, help you be more in touch with yourself, more in touch with your faith, and help you strive towards goals also. So, yeah, I think as a society, we're just conditioned to go the opposite direction that we should go. And again, what's the other aspect of that? Faith is not regarded anywhere near as highly as it used to be. So it's so much easier to say, like you said, that's just something I keep to myself. Or, I don't go to church because I have my own relationship with God, and I'm in touch with my spirituality. And when I hear that, and I don't mean for this to sound judgmental, but that's a person who sounds lost to me, who needs someone to reach out and help them the way others have helped me. So I think it's a constant struggle. It's a race we're all running, and everyone's looking for truth. As human beings, we seek truth in life, and we look in a lot of different places, and a lot of people sell false truths in this life. But when you figure out what real truth is, those are the people I know who have the most joy, who have things figured out, even in the amidst the chaos of life. They're able to navigate through those waters, and the canoe doesn't flip over. They always come through the rapids with a smile on their face.
That's powerful imagery just with itself, right? Those rapids, being out seeing rapids. I mean, stuff is intense. I remember we took teens to a camp called Cove Crest. I think we've probably
Georgia, right?
Georgia, right?
Yeah.
And we Chattanooga. I forget the river, but it's a long stretch. They've got class 3s and 4s there, rapids, and so depending on the year, depending on how the water levels are, you're getting one of those 2 trips. And the one year we ended up getting the 4s, and it's intense, right? But I remember likening it to life at the time, because I was in my mid-20s, and I was going through some rapids just trying to figure out life's directions. And I remember going through those things, and, you're sweating it. You're like, man, are we going to spill out? Am I going to die? And you're trying your hardest to just go with the flow of what your boat's captain is like. All right, paddle hard, and you're just, okay, I'm going to paddle as hard. I don't know what I'm doing, but here I am getting inundated with this white water, right? You go through and you're getting swamped, and just keep going. Okay, but you get to the other side of it, and there's a thrill of that hunt. I felt alive on the other side of those. And I think in the same way, when I'm going through life's challenges, it's not without its purpose. And when I have certainly hit the rapids in my own life, I know that, well, the thrill is a little less when you're dealing with some of these tragedies, right? That doesn't feel like a great type of race. But you get to the other side and you recognize that God's movements are even in that, in the challenge, because it strengthens you for the road ahead. And in ways that it wounds, but even with scars, that tissue is stronger than the original tissue. Mm-hmm. And you get through these rapids, you get to the other side, and you sit back and you say, God, that was a wild ride. And when you take a look at what those rapids are in your life, and you sit back and you reflect, and you say, what are you teaching me through that? How am I going to be stronger because of this? There's that thrill of growth. Like, wow, I know I'm stronger than I was. And not for the sake of, I'm just going to callous myself into, a cold-heartedness, but knowing that the Creator is along the ride with you the entire way. Because when you surrender, like that word you were saying, when you surrender, you know that God's in the midst of all of it. Mm-hmm. And He's always forming us. And back to the forged, right? When you're talking about forging these guys in a way that only the Lord can do, in the same way in each and one of our hearts, there's no easy way through that. And I think the Lord uses that in Scripture. You're going back to Proverbs, right? Iron sharpens iron. Mm-hmm. You don't just grab a piece of iron and just put it on a plate and say, it's going to make itself into a sword, right? It's going to make itself into a hammer. You just got to look at it.
Yep.
It requires heat and pressure, right? It requires hammering, pressure, challenge,
hard work,
sweat, right? Yep. Yeah. And I think that's what it means to be a man in the midst of this. And tying all this together back to that heart of adventure, going out, being in the outdoors, it's not easy. It's the challenge. And you know this, right? You've had some pretty incredible challenges with that.
Yeah. I mean, there's one that comes to mind. It was my first ultra hike. So that was the Great Range. And yes, please. So that was the Great Range, and the Great Range is the greatest mountain range in the Adirondacks, in my opinion. No pun intended, or maybe there is. But it starts with Mount Marcy and it goes all the way down. So this was a particularly awesome hike for me, and it had everything baked in, because I started this hike around 3 o'clock in the morning. So Magdalena, who owns the Rooster Comb Inn in Keene Valley, New York, she's become a really, really close friend, because I spent many nights there using them as a launching pad for hikes. She got up and drove me to the trailhead, dropped me off, and I was off to the races. So started with Mount Marcy, and sun was just coming up. I was supposed to see sunrise, but it was cloudy. It happens all the time out there. So it went Marcy, Haystack, Basin, Saddleback, Gothics, Armstrong, Upper Wolfjaw, Lower Wolfjaw, Hedgehog, Rooster Comb, then all the way down. And there were highs and lows in that hike, but I remember getting towards the end to Upper Wolfjaw Mountain, and I have this on my GoPro. It was so funny. There were a group of girls sitting on the summit, and I get up there and, casual, hey, how you doing? And asked them, what are you guys doing today? And they said, oh, just Upper Wolfjaw. What are you doing today? I said, the Great Range. And they said, what is that? And I pointed to Mount Marcy, which is way, way back in the horizon. I said, well, I started there, and I've been doing the whole mountain range. I came all the way down, and I'm headed to the bottom. And the one girl was just looking at me like, her jaw was just dropped. And the other girl, she's like, why? And I said, because it's awesome out here. That it's a challenge, and part of that hike is Saddleback, and on Saddleback are the Saddleback Cliffs, and that's 150 feet of 4 points on the rock. And if you lose one of those points and you don't have a good enough grip, you're not just going to fall and break your leg. You're not going to tell anybody about it. So it's one of those one of those situations where I remember having the GoPro on and I'm talking to myself as I'm going up, and I said, this is one of those sections where you really don't want to make a mistake because you're not going to be able to tell anybody about it if you do. But fast forward to the end, Father Leon was on vacation in Lake Placid, and I was supposed to meet him for dinner, and the hike was taking a little bit longer than it was supposed to, so I was actually running down the last section of the mountain from Rooster Combe down to the trailhead and running back to the Rooster Combe Inn on the road, like trying to run with my backpack on. And as I get back to the Rooster Combe, there were a bunch of people that were staying there that knew I was doing this hike, and they're all out on the front porch, like cheering for me as I'm running up. And the one guy's like, "You finished, you don't have to run." And I was like, "No, I do. I have to get to dinner." So, quick shower.
I gotta say, you're doing this great range, and you still have fuel in the tank to run, to make your way down to this. That's wild. All right, keep going.
But yeah, I mean, the body's shot, right? So by the time I get out of the shower, like, knees are starting to lock up. It's hard to even like dry off from the shower. Get my clothes on, go to Lake Placid, meet Father Leon for dinner, and like nothing ever happened that day. It's like, you guys have no idea what this day entailed. But yeah, it was just, it's that thrill of the adventure and just finishing, being in the car on the way to dinner, and I'm just like, that was awesome. I can't believe I just did that. This is everything that the surgeons told me you will never be able to do. Like, out of the question completely. You need to accept this new life, and I wasn't having that. And it just led to even more. And there's a couple of these left, two in New Hampshire and one up in Maine, that I'm still a little bit intimidated by. That's the real big one. But yeah, I love it. I can't wait to finish this challenge, and it's not for anyone but me. It's you versus you out there, and there's something about that that's just great.
Wow, man, I love that. Actually, the first iron ore that you came out with, here we are, we're just getting settled in. You're already at the camp, and you had just finished. How many miles was that?
It was 52 miles.
52 miles. You're like, I'm a little sore. You just come. I don't know if tomorrow's going to work. It's like, how many miles did you just finish? And you're like, we'll see how we're doing in the morning. Morning, you're up, spry like a rooster. You're just like, ready to go.
Yeah. Tape the feet up. It was good.
After 52 miles, then hitting Whiteface. You're wild, man.
And we had fun.
Yeah,
that was a fun hike.
That was a fun hike.
Yeah.
It was a fun hike. It was a good victory after the defeat we had during the test run. The year before we did the test run, we had just a small crew of guys that were going to, let's take a look and see what this looks like. And we got chased off the mountain. The storm wiped us out. And we came down, and I was feeling a little sore about it, And I remember getting to the bottom, the end of the trailhead. And the guys were like, hey, all right. But it was, we're coming back next year. And we're gonna beat this thing. And sure enough, next year we saddle up, you're along for the ride, and we all do that together. And that was a victory at the end of that, man, for all of us to just like be there and back, hitting the peak and back again, celebrating with a little bourbon, and man, prayer of thanksgiving on that, because that was just, it was awesome to do together.
Yeah.
And I always love getting out, the same type of I think headspace that you are, by myself when I'm out there just hiking around by myself, just locally. I really enjoy that. But there's something about doing that together, Hey, if we get it done, we get it done, but it's not so much about the destination, but who you become along the way.
Yep.
And I remember one of, I forgot who said that. One of one of my mentors, actually maybe it was McGreevy, who said that, and that always stuck with me. And it's true, because when you're doing that together, you're sharing that fellowship, heading up the mountain. There's some trial to that, but the conversation that comes along the way, you get to know the guys that you're walking with, and you're embracing the challenge together. There's just something about that, and especially in that prayerfulness of, hey, we're sharing in this camaraderie of faith, and not every moment is talking about the faith journey. A lot of times you're filling in, hey, tell me about your life, like what's good. Sometimes it's just silence. You're breathing hard and you're just working it. Awesome. I'm looking forward to this year.
Oh yeah.
Right. So we're at Mercy. This is my first time on Mercy, and man, I'm really looking forward to it. This is going to be great. We already have a good group of guys who are saddling up for this, and hey, here's where the pitch comes in. If you're a man who needs some of this adventure that we're talking about in life, if that's something that you feel like you want to kind of fill in that slugginess that you're finding in life right now, really consider jumping into this Iron Ore retreat. That is a call. That's an invitation to you. You might not even have met myself or Kyle. Maybe you just don't even know like what this is about. Think about it and pray about it. Say, I'm going to take the chance here. I'm going to take a leap here and put that call of the wild right into the calendar, right into the map. It's the last weekend of August 25th to the 27th. We're going to the Adirondacks. We're camping out. We're actually back at Draper's this time.
Nice.
Figured out I was working on some of the logistics. I want to make the backpacking happen at some point, like going down to the dam, down to that area. I got to figure that out with stocking up the gear to do that with a group of guys.
You'd be carrying a lot.
Yeah.
If we did it like we have been.
Yeah. So we've got some fine tuning to do with that. But for this one, we're going to be staying at a campground not far from where the trailhead is. And we're going to get up early. Well, actually, Friday, we're going to make a little break into Lake Placid. You're going to love that. Whiteface Lodge. Man, stunning over there.
Oh, yeah.
Then Saturday morning, we're going to get up. I think we're getting up a little bit earlier this time.
Oh, yeah.
I think this is going to be like, I don't know, what do you think, 4 or 5 o'clock?
4 sounds great.
So we're going to get up, and we're going to hit the mountain. This is the tallest mountain in New York. We're going to hit it. We're going to hit and get it. And I want you to come along, too, because this is just a great opportunity to jump not only into your faith and ask, Lord, what are you making me for? What am I made for? But to be able to come home fully recharged for the life ahead. And for you wives that are listening, and I'm appealing to you because your husband needs time like this. If you don't recognize that in your husband's life, he needs a taste of the wild. He needs to get out. He needs to be out with the boys. He needs to be out with the men who are forming and forging paths the way that God has created them to do. They need that. And that invitation is to you to approach your husband about that too. So, man, this is great. Thank you for jumping into this conversation.
And you get a note on that. You get to tell great stories. You get great memories. Should I tell one last good adventure story?
Yeah.
So we're in Glacier National Park, and we are just finishing the Highline Trail, which is regarded as one of the most beautiful trails in the whole country. It's part of the Continental Divide Trail that goes, from Texas all the way up through Montana to Canada. And beautiful day in the mountains. We saw mountain goats. We saw all this different wildlife. And I was thinking to myself, and I said this before we started the trip to my wife, her 2 brothers, and there's one other with us. I said, I really hope we see a grizzly bear on this trip because they're everywhere in Montana. And they're like, we don't want to see a grizzly bear on this trip. I said, I really want to see a grizzly bear. I hope we see one. And in the beginning of the trip, 2 miles into the trail, you hear rustling in the brush, and people are like, there's bears up there. Watch out. Get back. And I was like, oh, my gosh, we're going to see them right away. I'm like firing up the GoPro. I'm like, all right, waiting for them to come out. They never came out. So it was like a 60-mile loop that we did, and we're 50 miles in, no grizzly bears, no black bears, no bears at all. And if you've ever been to my house, there's bear stuff everywhere. Like, I just want bears on everything. I love that animal. And I've seen black bear in the Adirondack. I've seen them down in Allegheny, but I've never seen a grizzly bear. So we're coming down into camp off this Highline Trail. And I tend to walk fast, so I'm kind of ahead of the crowd. And I'm just walking down, and there's kind of a bridge that goes into camp, and it goes over this ravine. And as I'm coming across the bridge, there's this guy on the other side, and he's waving to me, like, get back, get back. He's telling me, get back, get back. He's like, there's a bear. All of a sudden, I hear, like, not rustling, like a thrashing down in the brush. And I could tell this was a bear. I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So I'm
GoPro.
backing up, turning the GoPro on. I'm fumbling, and I'm hearing the rustling come up, like, towards my side. They're back behind me. They weren't close enough to see what was going on. And I took a video of this with my phone. I think I showed it to you before. As I'm backing up, I, like, fell over because I was backing up. I'm a little shaky. And right as I steady the camera, this huge grizzly bear just comes bursting out of the woods, and he's just looking around, and he's huffing and puffing, and, like, stomped his feet a couple times because he was agitated that people kind of had him cornered on both sides. And everybody's frozen behind me. Like, my wife's, like, fumbling to get the bear spray out. He's just looking at us, and you didn't know what he was going to do. He could have easily taken every single one of us out in short order, and he just books it the other way into the woods. And we're all just standing there, and I looked at him, I said, that was awesome. And my wife was like, no, it wasn't. That was not awesome. I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. I said, this was it. Like, that's the whole trip. That's all I care about. I got it all. So that was probably one of the coolest adventure stories that I got to take home with me.
Oh, that's wild. Bears scare me. Like, black bears, not really, but
No.
really, like, I hear some of these awful deaths by grizzlies, and man, they scare me.
Yeah, you're in their territory, and that was just like the coolest encounter. That it was any closer would have been way too close for comfort. According to the people we were with, it was already way too close for comfort. For me, any closer would have been too close for comfort, and he just hung out for a minute, booked off, and it was awesome.
Wow. And that's part of telling the adventure story.
Yeah.
You go do these things, you have a story to tell, right? Right up here, I don't know if you can see these, but I've got the rocks from each one of the Adirondack climbs with iron ore. And there's a little exercise that I was doing, just kind of figuring out. You take two rocks, and one of the rocks is what do you want to leave on the mountain, and what one of the rocks is what you're going to take home with you. And obviously you get to take a rock home, right? But there's so much more to that, where at least for me, taking these home is I want to be a better husband and a father. And each time I'm coming home and I'm putting that on here, and this is a reminder, I want to be a rock in my family, and I keep that there. So every time I'm in the office, I'm getting some work done, whether maybe I'm doing some writing in here, or if we're just doing some whatever. I'm always looking at that because there's a story for each one of those climbs.
Yep.
And every time I look at it, like Algonquin, Whiteface. Actually, I've got two Whitefaces up there. One of them's the test run. The other one was the victory. And I see the names and the faces of the guys who I did each ascent with and descent. And I remember each peak of just being up there and giving Thanksgiving of like, wow, man, we're in God's country. Each one of those is a story. And so in the same way, talking about that story, like there's stories to be had, right? Adventure is a story. It's a witness. It's a fueling of the heart. And man, I'm looking forward to getting back out there.
Me too.
And we are, what's today's date? Just over a month to get back out there. Man, it's going to be awesome. Kyle, this has been great.
Likewise. It's always a pleasure, Adam.
Oh, man.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Hey, you too.
Yeah.
You too. And you three. Look, you're at home right now. Maybe you made it to the end of this video. And listen, you've got great things put out on your heart. You're made for great things. And you're made for hard things. You know what? Maybe a mountain isn't your thing, right? You're saying, I can't do a mountain. It's not really something I'm interested in. It doesn't have to be a mountain. But there are mountains in your life that you need to ascend, that are put there for a reason, especially for you men, to say, I need to live the life that's been given to me. And it is not without its challenges. So you have to be able to rise and meet those challenges that are given to you every time they show up. You can't throw in the towel. You can't quit. You can't lay down and just roll over and let the mountain hit you. Because you have to get up every single time. And you have to give it back. And the best way of doing that is getting your reps in. So take the challenge, whatever challenge it is, and meet it face on and get at it. You only have one life. And this is the life that's given to you. Make the most out of it. Don't let another moment slip by where you're in the sludge, where you're living mediocrity, where you're living in a way that you're not proud of. Shed that stuff and pick up your pack and let's go. You are made for those great things. And as Pierre Giorgio would say, to the heights and start climbing. Whatever that mountain is. And maybe it's with us. So if that is the case, come and join us. You can actually go right to the website. Everything is right there. Registration's right there. All the details right there. If you have any questions, reach out. Love to answer any of them. But Kyle and I will be out on that mountain. We hope to see you there. And if it's not this year, next year, we're going to actually be Buffalo side. We're going to be done with the 3 high peaks. And we're going to start a local New York to national park series. And next year is going to be here in Buffalo. I actually just scoped out where we're going to be. It's going to be at the St. Stanislaus Convent.
Awesome.
It's spectacular in there. I just got the grand tour of it. They had just brushed it up, dusted off the shelves, put away the mothballs. It's spectacular. It's going to work perfectly for this.
Awesome.
So that's going to be our Buffalo location for next year. And the following year is going to be Acadia National Park out in Maine. And we're going to be right on the shore. We're going to do some adventure out there. And we're going to rotate on out. Local New York, National Park. Be a part of the adventure and keep asking the question, Lord, what do you want me to do? And pursue the answer. So thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this, if there was anything about this that you feel needs to be shared with people in your life, share it. If you're not subscribed already, hey, subscribe, hit the bell. You've heard that plea before. That helps us. We're still on the early side of this podcast. So any help you can get getting this word out really means a lot. But we're just getting started here with this podcast and with everything you see with Righteous Go. So dream, do, be righteous, be out there and do the thing. Kyle, thanks again, man. This is great.
You got it, brother.
Yeah. We'll see you guys soon.